Most of us, when we think of the Wright brothers, we picture them conquering the air, right? But what if I told you their biggest challenges weren't actually in the sky? They happened on the ground, in courtrooms, and in the pages of history books. Today, we're going to dig into the incredible battles they had to win long after that first famous flight. Yeah, it's one of those facts we all learn in school. December 17th, 1903, Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. Orville and Wilbur Wright achieved the first sustained, controlled, powered flight. And that's kind of where the story usually ends, isn't it? Well, that first flight, that was just the opening bell. To really secure their legacy, they had to fight and win a series of absolutely epic battles. First, against the very laws of physics. Then, a brutal war in the courtroom. And finally, a fight for their very place in history. Okay, so let's jump into that first fundamental challenge. Actually mastering the air. I mean, getting off the ground for 12 seconds, that's one thing. But taming the sky? That was a whole different ballgame. See, the Wrights approached the whole problem of flight completely differently than their rivals. Most inventors, including the really well-funded guys like Samuel Langley, were just obsessed with power. Their approach was basically, let's build something that's inherently stable, like a boat, and just strap a massive engine to it and hope for the best. But the Wrights? They knew the real challenge wasn't power at all, it was control. And their unique perspective? It came from a super unlikely place, their bicycle shop. Think about it. A bicycle isn't stable on its own. It needs constant input, constant tiny adjustments from the rider to stay upright. They realized a plane would be exactly the same. It needed active, dynamic control from a pilot to actually work. And the process was just so methodical. They started by just observing birds, noticing how they twisted their wingtips to roll and turn. Then they mastered gliders to become expert pilots before they even thought about adding an engine. And get this, when all the existing aerodynamic data turned out to be wrong, they didn't quit. No, they built their own wind tunnel to generate the correct data from scratch. It was this perfect system: observe, master, and then innovate. And all of that hard work led to this. This is the real magic, the true core of their invention. It wasn't just wings and an engine. It was a single, unified system for three-axis control. They used wing warping to control the roll, a forward elevator for the pitch, and a movable rudder for the yaw. For the very first time, this gave a pilot absolute control in the air. This was the breakthrough. But mastering control was just one part of the battle. The 1903 flyer proved flight was possible, sure, but as Orville himself put it, the thing was extremely erratic. Now they had to turn this wobbly proof of concept into a truly practical, usable machine. And the progress they made in just 2 years is, well, it's just astonishing. Just look at the difference here between the 1903 and the 1905 models. They went from a flight that lasted 59 seconds to one that was almost 40 minutes long. They went from a fragile, barely there prototype to the world's first practical aircraft, one that could bank, turn, and fly figure eights with ease. The 1905 Flyer 3, that was the machine that really changed the world. But inventing the airplane was one thing. Now they faced a totally new kind of battle, the fight to actually own their idea. Their success immediately attracted rivals, and pretty soon, the Wrights found themselves in a bitter, all-out legal war. So their biggest rival was this other brilliant inventor named Glenn Curtiss. And to get around the Wrights' patent, Curtiss developed a different way to bank the plane: ailerons. Those small hinged flaps on the back of the wings we see today? He argued that because his mechanism was different, he wasn't infringing. But the Wrights shot back, saying the method, creating differential lifts to control the roll, that was their core invention, and it didn't matter how you did it. The whole legal battle got incredibly personal and nasty. In court, Curtiss's lawyers actually tried to belittle the Wrights' achievement, arguing they were nothing more than skillful airplane chauffeurs. The implication was that they were just passengers in their own invention. Can you imagine? But in the end, the court sided with the Wrights. The ruling was huge. They said the Wrights held a pioneering patent, which is way broader than a normal one. It protected the fundamental function of three-axis control, not just the specific device of wing warping. It was a massive victory. They hadn't just invented the airplane, they now legally owned the very concept of how to fly one. So after winning in the air and then winning in the courts, you'd think their legacy was totally secure. But no. Orville, after Wilbur's tragic death in 1912, had to fight one last bitter war, this time against America's most powerful scientific institution. Yeah, this final battle began when the Smithsonian tried to literally rewrite history. They wanted to save the reputation of their former secretary, Samuel Langley, whose own plane, the Aerodrome, failed spectacularly in 1903. So, years later in 1914, the institution let Glenn Curtiss, the Wright's rival, secretly and heavily modify it. After a few short hops, the Smithsonian turned around and claimed the machine had been capable of flight all along in its original 1903 form. Orville's struggle against this lie, it lasted for 30 years. He was so outraged that in 1928 he did something drastic. He sent the original 1903 Wright flyer into exile, loaning it to a museum in London. It was a massive act of protest. He refused to let it come home until the Smithsonian publicly set the record straight. All Orville wanted was for the Smithsonian to publish the full list of changes made to Langley's machine. When they finally did, decades later, in 1942, the list was damning. They hadn't just made a few minor tweaks. They'd fundamentally altered the wings, strengthened the entire frame, installed a new control system based on the Wright's own principles. It was a whole new plane. It proved, without a doubt, that the original 1903 Aerodrome was totally incapable of flight. So finally, Orville's persistence paid off. In 1942, the Smithsonian issued a formal public apology, finally retracting its false claims. The battle for history was won. The Wright flyer came home in 1948, tragically the same year Orville died, at long last taking its rightful place as the invention that launched the aviation age. You know, the story of the Wright brothers teaches us that a breakthrough isn't just a single eureka moment. It's a relentless series of battles against physics, against rivals, and even against history itself. It's a powerful reminder that just having the great idea is only the first step. The real victory is in the fight to make it real, make it count, and make it last.